How do the enemies of God react when God's wrath bears down on them? Well, honestly, they usually react by doing a whole lot more of the thing that got them in trouble in the first place. This is Eric Slaywick, the UWM Pen Guy, and this is the Bible Commentary. As always, if you liked what you're seeing, I'd ask that you hit like and subscribe in order to help the channel grow. And now, without further ado, let's get into the Word. So today we're going to begin the study of Joshua chapter 9 with looking at verses 1 and 2. And they say, as soon as all the kings who were beyond the Jordan in the hill country and in the lowland, all along the coast of the Great Sea, toward Lebanon, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites heard of this, they gathered together as one to fight against Joshua and Israel. So you can see here that this is the image of futility from God's perspective and from a spiritual perspective. The natural human way of thinking is, well, if I wasn't able to solve my problem with a little bit of something, let's get a whole lot of it, and maybe that'll work. Now, there are many cases in which that's true on a merely human level, but when you're fighting against God, we'll see here that it actually accomplishes the opposite of its goal, where God merely uses your foolish stubbornness to corral you into a place where he can engage in an even more spectacular act of power and destruction. Indeed, we will get basically the ultimate level of this during the tribulation with the Battle of Armageddon, where it says that all the armies of the world that still remained at that time, because the world is undergoing an immense level of destruction such as never been witnessed before, they gather together to fight against Christ. And on a more mundane, well, not mundane, but a more day-to-day level, we see that the fulfillment of the psalm which said, why do the nations rage and the Gentiles gather together against the Lord and against his anointed? Now, Gentiles here merely pointing out the fact that both religious people, at that time the Jewish people, and today being anyone who's religious without knowing God, and the Gentiles, quote unquote, the nations, the generality of secular humanity, were gathering together against Christ to put him on the cross. But they accomplished what God's holy purpose had intended to be accomplished through this. In all three examples, indeed, you see how God works this such that the schemes of those who scheme against him fall in on themselves, and he accomplishes his purpose anyways. This is an important theme about the work of God, that if, for a believer, if someone will not obey God or will disqualify themselves through their own sin, then God isn't the loser. He merely moves to someone else who is willing to do his will and serve his purpose. Indeed, we see a dramatic example of this in the book of Acts when the Apostle Paul speaks on behalf of God and says that essentially, I've had it up to here with you and your rebellion and your continuous rejection of my grace and my gospel, and now I will turn to the Gentiles. Again, this isn't anything, to be clear, inherent about being Jewish. It's just that at this time, these particular Jewish people had become so hard-hearted and stubborn and self-righteous and lost in their false religion that was an act of rebellion and defiance against the will of God, that they, as Paul says here, as Luke, says here, they had essentially accounted themselves as being unworthy of eternal life. They would rather have the emptiness of religion than the reality of the power of God. That's what's going on here. And so on all three levels, on the national, on the sort of international, and on the personal, you can see how God is the one at work. God is the one who has power. We will see in the rest of Joshua 9 how utterly futile this act of rebellion is. So if you are indeed on, I guess, the wrong side of God's power, then I would encourage you strongly today to turn to God through Christ and his salvation on the cross by grace through faith, not of works, so that no one can boast. And so until next time, this is Eric Slawick, the UWM Pen Guy, and this has been the Bible Commentary.